I picked today's topic because people keep asking me about it. I haven't really talked much about concept testing up until now. It's something I've been we've been doing for many years and sort of focusing on how to do this best and sort of uncovered all the challenges with it. But I haven't really talked about it because it wasn't really a subject until in the last year where it's become very, very popular. It's a tool that lots of teams are adding to their toolbox. It's something that people are explicitly building into processes that they have for what works and what doesn't on their systems, and it's all good. It's I'm glad people are thinking about this stuff. It doesn't always go by the name of concept testing, just like everything else in the world of UX. We have multiple names for it, and those names sometimes mean different things and sometimes mean the same things because God forbid we have everything named consistently across our field, but that's fine. We can work with that. Other names you may have heard are prototype testing, design sprints, product discovery is often thought of as a concept testing idea. Speculative design is what the academics like to refer to it as. So it's got a bunch of names and it's been around for a while and I mean frankly we've been doing it since the 90s, so it's not new, but its popularity has suddenly grown and that in itself is interesting that we're seeing this. And I think the reason that we're seeing the popularity grow suddenly is because of the frustrations people have with trying to get UX and Agile to work together. Agile was theoretically supposed to answer the questions that concept testing would answer, in that it would tell us what customers really would find valuable and useful. But the way most folks have implemented UX and Agile together, it doesn't tell you whether customers would find something valuable until you've built it out and deliver it. And that's expensive, right? So the whole idea behind concept testing is to answer a basic question. If we delivered this new idea or capability into the world, would our customers and users find it valuable and useful? Right? Would they use it? Would they use it so much that and value it so much that they would pay extra for it? This is the basic idea. And on surface, this sounds like a great idea, right? If we can predict whether in fact people have people would use this thing and find it really valuable, it should have a higher priority on our to-do list. If we find out early enough in the process that this thing would not be valuable, that people would not use it, we save ourselves a tremendous amount of expense and time and missed opportunities. So these are key questions to ask ourselves. And really, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to reduce risk, right? It is really expensive to build something that it turns out nobody wants, right? How many times have you been involved in projects where you busted your butt to get something out the door only to have crickets when it was time for the users to use it? And it would be huge to make sure that we're not missing something that really would be valuable to people, right? That we are making sure that we are building out the things that are so valuable that people are willing to pay extra for it, to take advantage of it, to do all the things that really make a difference. And one way to think about this is we can think about it in terms of a couple of dimensions, right? We can think about it in terms of uh, should we build this, or uh, uh, should we not build this thing? And that's what our friend concept testing is supposed to tell us. But the problem is that should we build it and should we not build it? Those are the questions that we want to get answers to. There's another dimension to this, which is that uh, uh, that it turns out to be valuable or it's not valuable. And the thing is that what concepts testing is supposed to do is it's supposed to give us a clear indication that it's valuable, which tells us we should build it, and a clear indication that it's not valuable and we shouldn't build it. So that's what we want from concept testing. The problem is that if the concept testing is not working right for us, we make one of two clear mistakes, right? So what we're also trying to do is we're trying to make sure that if the idea or concept is not valuable, that we shouldn't build it, right? And if it is valuable, we want to make sure we don't accidentally not build it. And so these two things turn out to be risk reduction, right? All four of these things turn out to be risk reduction, right? We don't want to build things that are not valuable. We don't want to, or that's this one. We don't want to miss things that are valuable. That's what this one is, right? And the problem is that if the concept testing returns one of those two conditions wrongly, then we get what we call either a false positive or a false negative, right? This here is a false positive. The testing said we should build it, but it turns out not to be valuable to our customers and users. Or the testing said we should not build it. This is a false negative. And it turns out that if we didn't build it, we're missing this huge opportunity and leaving that as something that our competitors could find very valuable. And so where concept testing fails us is when it returns the wrong answer here. When it returns either a false positive or a false negative. And the risk of that is actually very high. And so that's why we're talking about this today, is that a lot of people focus in on this idea that they're going to build some sort of prototype, or they're going to show people some capability, or they're just even going to just have an interview and say, if we were to build this, would you find it useful? And those things in general turn out to be very problematic. That those things, when we have those false positives and those false negatives, we get ourselves into significant problems. And there's basically 6 ways that we can have this this fail. I've been talking a lot about value, so let's take a little digression and talk about that for a second, because value, from my perspective, is whether somebody finds that the product or concept is so valuable that they are willing to pay for it. And if you've been here for the last few months, you've probably seen me talk about this before. We can think in terms of experiences that users have, and we can think in terms of that experience being on a scale from extreme frustration to extreme delight. And we can think that there are moments on this timeline that a given user will have where they're frustrated and where they're delighted, right? And these are relative measures, right? You're relatively frustrated compared to where you were a moment ago. You're relatively delighted compared to where you were a moment ago. But what's interesting about this is we can map this directly to value. And when we map this to value, we can talk about it in this way, right? Everything below this center line, which is basically, from here to here is frustration. That, whether it's a little frustration or a lot of frustration, that is basically what we can classify as poor UX. And poor UX typically happens because we've missed some expectation that the user had, or we have some sort of unmet need that the user might have. And one of the things that concept testing might be able to tell us, for example, is what those unmet needs are, what those missed expectations are, so we can talk in terms of those things. So this idea of poor UX is that poor UX is not particularly valuable. People will be interested in paying in terms of improving that value going forward. So what we can do is we can take these unmet needs, we can talk about missed expectations, and we can fix that. If we go above this center line, the center line, by the way, is sort of generic satisfaction, right? Satisfaction is not delight. Satisfaction is just minimal needs being met. So the moment we meet expectations or we meet needs, we go across this line. And this is great. Suddenly, people will pay more for something that meets their needs and meets their expectations better because it solves the problems that they have. So value increases when we get from poor UX to good UX. We've actually increased the value to the customer. So this gets us to a better place. But we can do better than this, which is we can think in terms of exceeding expectations or anticipating the user's needs. And it turns out that users will pay a lot more for this. This is what we can call great UX. And great UX is this region above good UX, where we are actually exceeding the expectations. We are doing we're producing value so much that people are just blown away by this. If you've ever run into the situation where you've had a product or service that had what we call latent needs being met, which is in essence, it's like, I never knew I needed this, but I am so happy I have this. That's anticipating needs. That's exceeding your expectations. One way to exceed expectations is to set them incredibly low to begin with. But that only lasts for a little while because the new expectations become the baseline. So you always have to work really hard to keep exceeding expectations. And this is where real value comes in. The real value happens when we can go from poor UX to great UX. And so that's the key here, is that we want to push beyond basic satisfaction, basic good UX, into great UX. So if we're really going to use concept testing to do well, we want to make sure that it's telling us that this is going to anticipate needs and exceed expectations. But the problem with that is people often don't know what their expectations are or what their needs are, and they certainly don't know how to anticipate their needs. If they did, it would be a need. It wouldn't be something that they'd be surprised by when we did a good job. So we run into this issue where there are basically a bunch of ways where concept testing will give us the wrong information. It'll give us force us into the wrong conclusion. We will be in this situation where we get a false positive or we get a false negative, and we, at that point, we're sort of in this place where we are making a catastrophic decision. We're either deciding to invest in something that is going to cost a whole bunch of effort and money and time to build, only to see no returned value from it, or we're going to not invest in something which could have been really amazing, except that now we're leaving that door open for our competitor. And by leaving it open for the competitor, we fall into the trap that this is going to be hugely problematic for us downstream, because this is why we're not a market leader. We are in fact just a follower of somebody else. And so this is key. And the 6 things that basically get us into trouble are, grab a new card here. In essence, they are basically, these are catastrophic problems. With concept testing. The 6 things that get us into trouble. The first one is that we either invest too much or too little in building out the concept. And so this is a problem if you build too much and it turns out that this is not a good idea, then you've just invested a whole lot to find out that you shouldn't have spent any of that time. So there's this push to actually try to minimize this and to use prototyping tools or just put sketches of concepts in front of people, maybe just, a basic design that is really not really communicative, just something very simple. And that gets us into trouble, right? So one of the most common things that I see is that people show a concept to the participants in whatever their testing protocol is, and they say, so do you think this would be useful to you? And people look at it and they don't really know what they're looking at, and they say, oh yeah, this would be great. And that gets you your false positive right there. Or you build out a little bit too much, and then you find out that after you built it, that this is a solution in search of a problem, and nobody's actually that interested in it. And now you spent all the time it took you to build it to discover that. And so this point between too much and too little is actually really hard to hit. And so it's usually either one or the other. And that's the issue there. The second problem that we see is basically reviewing out of context, reviewing the concept uh, uh, out of the context of use. And this is what happens when you show people something and they don't have a chance to actually see it in its intended use. And they go, why would I want that? Or they say, oh no, this would be amazing. And again, if those two things are the opposite of what will happen when you deliver it, they are problematic. So this is absolutely a killer for us. But the problem is, in order to put it into context, in order to get it to be used, let's say this is a feature that will allow you to add students into the education software quickly, right? We have a new class of students. We want to be able to add them in quickly. That sounds great. Everybody's going to say, I would love to be able to add students in quickly, except if it leaves out essential details because you've chopped functionality out and you're no longer putting in things that the instructor needs for that student, they may not notice that in the concept. They may, for instance, think, oh, that must be on another screen that I'm not seeing here right now. And so this is really key, that without knowing what the reality of the contextual work is, you get yourself into trouble. The third is only focusing on first exposure. And this is a common problem that we see because this idea that we're building out is completely unfamiliar to the participant in our study. So they're seeing it for the first time, and all the feedback that they're going to give you is first-time feedback. Well, that's fine if first-time feedback is basically the only time they'd use the capability. But for many of the things that we build, these are things that they will use multiple times over and over and over again. And what we're not seeing is what it's like to use it the 10th time or the 100th time or the 1000th time. And something that seems really great the first time is potentially really problematic the 1000th time, or vice versa. Something that seems really confusing or unusable the first time may not matter, especially if someone's going to hold your hand or if you're going to build out some sort of user assistance that's going to get people to ramp up their knowledge of it. And then suddenly it's the whole purpose of use is the 1000th time you're going to use it. It's a productivity thing. So first exposure only is part of the problem to all this. The fourth thing that gets us into trouble is this thing that we should know better about, but that we're asking about the future. And we know in an interview that when we say if something is do you think that you would use this thing? We know that that's a bad idea. We shouldn't be asking questions about the future. But all of concept testing is asking people to predict the future, right? Predict what it's going to be like going forward. So this is hugely problematic. The fifth thing is that we often resort if they like it versus if it's actually going to solve a problem, right? We talk to them and say, is this a good idea? And this is something that often happens with people who haven't been trained in research, who are adopting some sort of concept testing approach. You see this with a lot of executives or product managers who just say, let's just put it in front of the users and see if they like it. And so this idea of liking it becomes important. How would we measure if they like it? And it turns out that in actual product design use or service design use, we don't actually care if they like it. What we care about is if it works for them. We know that something that is anticipating their needs and exceeding their expectations, they're going to like better than something that doesn't meet their needs and misses their expectations. So we don't have to focus on like, we focus on expectations and needs. But in most concept testing, you can't get that far. So we end up reverting to this idea of, hey, if we give you this, would you like it? And that's a big problem. And then the last thing that gets people into trouble is that we believe that the participants are representative of the people that we're going to talk to. And this is primarily a problem, or often a problem, when the users and the choosers are different people, the people who choose to use our product versus the people who are going to be using our product. In many, many products and services, they are not the same people. A lot of enterprise apps, even some consumer products and services, are the people who decide that we're going to do things a certain way or use a certain tool is not decided by everybody who gets to use it. And so this is a key issue. And if we ask the wrong people the questions, we don't get the answers of what it's like for everybody. So those few people we asked might believe that that they are talking to people who represent the rest of the market, the rest of people who are going to be going through. So those are our six that the participants are representative, that's what I wanted to write, that we're asking about whether they like it or not, that we're asking about the future, that the first exposure only is what we're looking at, that we're viewing this out of context, and that we're investing either too much or too little to build this thing in order to get the answers from each of these things. And the problem with any of these is that all we need is one of these to go wrong, and we are in the category where we are getting either a false positive or a false negative. And it's those two categories that get us into huge trouble. So if this is the case, what do we do? And the reason that I wanted to make this a topic today is that every time I got a question about doing concept testing, I cringed inside. I was trying to do my best to help people build out the right toolkit, but concept testing in itself is so risky, it ends up reducing the value of what it's trying to do. It actually puts us into a situation where we get ourselves in trouble. And that is because we often are doing concept testing to compensate for the fact that we haven't done the right research up until this moment. We're going into concept testing too cold. And by that I mean we don't know enough about who our users are, what our users need, what their current experience is like, and what their future experience should be. And the alternative to this is to invest in better strategic UX research. That it's strategic UX research that is what we should be really investing in, not building up our understanding of how to do better concept testing. Concept testing, in my experience, is compensating for the fact that we haven't done a good job strategically in our research. And so by this, what I mean is, when we think about research, when we think about UX strategy, there are basically four essential elements to UX strategy. And well, where should I start? I'm going to start with understanding, right? So we have our experience. We have the experience of users, right? So this is our experience diagram that I drew for you before. Extreme frustration to extreme delight. And what we need to do is we need to understand what the experience is like for our users, right? And the best way to go out to do that is to go meet a user, right? And those of you who know me know that the first user I always like to meet, I name Edna. This is not a persona. This is a real person that we've met. So Edna is someone who's using our design. I used an education example before. So Edna's a teacher who's starting up a new year or a new course, and we're trying to get her all set up so she can be fantastic at teaching. And she's got to have all the students entered into the system so that it works great. And so we can sort of look at all of the different things that Edna does to get set up for the year, some of which is the stuff that uses our product, some of which is the stuff that isn't involving our product. And as we watch each of these things that Edna does, she does this one first, then that one, then that one, then that one, we can say, okay, well, the first thing she does is delightful. The next thing she does might be a little frustrating because the system, it's too onerous to enter each student, and she has 5 classes that she teaches each this semester, and each one has 25 to 40 students in it, and so she's entering in hundreds of students, but then she gets the students in, but then when she goes to use it in the classroom, it's not giving her the right access and information, and she doesn't know what she's doing there. So there are moments of delight, there are moments of frustration. And this is what we call the current experience. This is the first essential element of strategic UX, is that we have to fully understand Edna's experience. If we don't understand Edna's experience, if we don't understand what's frustrating and what's delightful about her experience, then we're never going to know what ideas are going to make it better. So if we just come in with a concept and say, hey, Edna, would this make your world better? But we don't understand what is frustrating her, what is delighting her, the odds of us getting that right are incredibly slim. So the first thing is that we have to understand Edna's experience, and not just Edna's experience. We have to understand Janice's experience. We have to understand Marina's experience. We have to understand Chris's experience, right? We have to understand as many experiences as we can. All of those experiences are going to make a difference for us. So it's absolutely key that we keep meeting users and really getting to understand their experience. And that's an essential part of strategic UX, is that we're focused on experiences, not on the product we're building, but on the experiences. And we really build up expertise in those experiences. So once we understand those experiences and we can see, well, Edna isn't the only one who has this problem or this problem. It turns out that Janisa and Marina and Chris all experience these problems in some form or other. We can start to ask the question, well, how would we make it so that this was delightful all the way across? So that getting set up for the school year was not something that was onerous and frustrating, but in fact was easy. And that becomes our UX outcome. That's our goal. Right? We are now going to deliver something that is going to improve Edna's and Janice's and Marina's and Chris's life, because we understand how to build something that will eliminate the frustration and anticipate their needs and really understand how this works. And so that idea of getting from the current experience to this improvement, that's what we're doing when we're acting strategically. Now, this concept, this thing we're thinking of building, we can refer to that as a solution. That's the thing that we're going to build in order to get the outcome. But in order to know what that build is, we have one more essential element to our UX strategy, and that's to ask the question: if Edna can get this outcome without us, we don't need to build anything, right? So the question is, what is it that Edna can't do in order to achieve the outcome? What is it that she needs us to do? What are the things that are problems in her life that we have to solve? And the fact that we haven't solved them yet probably means that they're problems in our life. And so we need to understand the problems that we're trying to solve. Now, this is critical because the concept that we're thinking of, it's a solution. We need to understand the problem that this is a solution for. Too many concepts are solutions that don't have a corresponding problem. There are solutions in search of a problem. Hey, what if we built AI into this thing? Okay, what does Edna need AI for? At what point in her experience would large language model AI be helpful? I don't know. Okay, that's a solution in search of a problem. And so what we're talking about here is we use the current experience to inform us about the problems we have to solve. We use the problems to drive the concept, the solution that we want to provide. And then hopefully that solution delivers the improvement. And if it doesn't, well, we get smarter about the problems. This idea of concept testing, it lives in this liminal space, the space between the problems to solve and building out the solution. We're trying to find out whether the solution is worth building. And unfortunately, in too many cases, we don't know what the problems we're trying to solve are. We don't know them well enough. This space in here, with the problems to solve in the current experience, this is the necessary ingredient to really understand whether the concept we have is the right concept to build. But here's the little secret. If we know that, because we've got the expertise, the required expertise here, suddenly we no longer need to do concept testing. We now have enough information to be able to move forward with the solution or not move forward with the solution. Because in these instances, we are in a place where we are experts in who our users are, what our users need, what the current experience is like, and what the future experience needs to be like. When we are experts in that, we don't need concept testing anymore. It is just a tool to compensate because we don't have this expertise. And this is the problem. The tool will inevitably fail us. And oftentimes, if it doesn't fail us, it was more luck than anything else. So we get a false sense that this tool is actually beneficial to us. So putting this tool in the toolkit in lieu of building up the tools we need to build out our understanding of the current experience and the future and the problems to solve is key. And so this is really the challenge. This is what we're up against. And this is particularly important when we're talking about Agile. Because what Agile does is it forces everything down to really small time-boxed work. It forces everything down into 2 to 3 week sprints. And concept testing tends to be focused down there too. And that just increases the risk of either a false positive or a false negative. And again, it's because we don't have enough knowledge that is getting us into trouble. We need to build out that expertise of current knowledge and problems to solve. There's no reason why any other organization should know our users better than we do. And so this is what we can deliver to our teams that will be most valuable. Not techniques and concept testing, but actually understanding the experiences of our users and why they're not getting the outcomes that we've identified would be most valuable to them. And so in order to pull this off, we need to have a strategic Agile UX approach to make that happen. When our teams become the foremost experts in their users and their users' need, we don't need concept testing. But in order to do that, we need to make sure that we have built up our approach to Agile UX in such a way that we are becoming, not just us, but the product teams we work with, development teams we work with, everybody who is making decisions is becoming the world's foremost experts on who the users are and what the users need. And that's the key thing that we need to focus on. So, this is what I wanted to make sure that we talked about today. Concept testing is just compensating because we are not building out the right process. And to master concept testing is the wrong direction to go in. What we really want to do is to make sure that we are delivering the best results. Jared here. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing so you'll get more videos like this. If you have any comments, questions, or thoughts, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And hey, consider joining our Leaders of Awesomeness community. It's completely free, home to over 50,000 UX leaders who regularly share questions, ideas, inspiration about their experiences. The link is in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.